The emergency exit was blocked again. Third time this quarter. This time by a stack of promo pallets full of inspirational mugs with words like grit and hustle slapped on the side. Real poetic, considering it was one minor fire hazard away from turning the warehouse into a ceramic crematorium. I snapped a photo, timestamped it, and added it to the growing pile, Report 47B. Exit obstruction, still not addressed. I used to think paperwork was dull. Now I knew it was the only thing keeping people from dying stupid corporate deaths under collapsible motivational merchandise. The file on my screen was a 78-page Frankenstein of OSHA violations. Cracked loading docks, electrical panels left open like invitations to spontaneous combustion, even a report from a warehouse manager who swore someone had passed out from heat stroke during a triple shift, though HR buried that under a fatigue incident. I highlighted the unresolved ones in red like blood splatters. The printer jammed halfway through. Figures. Linda Hay chirped a voice like a ringtone set to smug intern. I looked up. It was her, Amber, the VP's daughter, our new workplace operations director. 25, business degree from somewhere that prioritizes branding over literacy. She had that fresh glow people get from never being told no long enough to mistake it for leadership. She stood in the doorway like she was posing for her LinkedIn profile, blonde ponytail swinging like it came with Wi-Fi. I'm doing a walkthrough this afternoon. Need everything looking presentable. Investors are touring the logistics floor Friday and Daddy wants things spotless. I stared at her. You mean the exit that's still blocked by your grit mugs, or the forklift battery room that's leaking acid again? She wrinkled her nose. Ugh, details, that's why we have you. Just make it disappear. She walked off before I could respond, probably off to write a Leadership Matters post about synergy. An hour later, I sat across from the COO. I'd sent him the updated violations log. He clicked through the spreadsheet like it was a BuzzFeed quiz. Linda, he sighed, you're excellent at your job. But these numbers, if we present this during Q3 evaluations, the optics could hurt funding. So fix the problems, I said. Violations are real. I have photos, timestamps, internal reports. Not one of these is exaggerated. He leaned back and gave me the look. You know the one, corporate, tired, practiced. The kind men empower use when they've decided your conscience is now inconvenient. Just let it go. For this quarter, help us look good and I'll personally greenlight a safety overhaul after the board signs off. That's when I knew we weren't protecting workers. We were painting over rot with high-gloss bullshit. I walked back to my desk, passing Amber as she arranged a pyramid of hard hats by color. Cute, she said, snapping a selfie. Safety aesthetic, my jaw tightened. I didn't respond. Just sat down, opened my external drive, and started copying every document to a private folder marked insurance. I'd been here 16 years. I knew where this was going. And if you know where this is going, if you've ever watched a safety net turn into a trap woven by morons in power suits, take 2 seconds to hit that like button and subscribe. Seriously, most people don't, and it's the only thing that keeps our little rebellion alive. Plus, you don't want to miss what's coming next. That afternoon, I was formally introduced to Amber during the company-wide meeting. This is Amber Myers, said the VP, beaming like he'd just adopted a rescue dog. She's bringing new energy to our operations. Linda, she'll be partnering with you on compliance. She gave me a wave, not a handshake, a wave, like we were playing Tea Party. I smiled with every tooth I had, of course. I'll make sure she has everything she needs. In my head, I was stapling OSHA code violations to her forehead. Later that day, Amber scheduled a walkthrough for her and the investor team, but told the floor leads not to bring up any ongoing incidents. When the warehouse manager asked about the busted ventilation system, she laughed and said, "We'll just say it's eco airflow." That was the moment I stopped playing nice. She might have been the VP's daughter, but I was the compliance officer of record. I had a federally issued license and more dirt in my desk drawer than a construction site. I started printing backups, sent myself encrypted emails, flagged every change they made. By sunset, I had a paper trail long enough to trip over, and a sick feeling in my gut that I'd need it soon. Because when they stop replying to your reports and start promoting glittery idiots with no credentials, you're not in a workplace anymore. You're in the blast radius. Monday morning kicked off with Amber strutting through the warehouse in steel-toed boots that had never met actual steel. She had a clipboard in one hand, a ring light in the other, and a marketing intern filming her like she was unveiling the next iPhone. Safety is everyone's responsibility, she chirped, sweeping her arm toward a row of newly painted caution lines. The paint was still wet. One of the temp workers had already slipped in it an hour earlier. "You okay?" I asked him as he limped past. "Yeah," he muttered. "Boss lady said I should have read the floor." Amber didn't notice. She was too busy posing in front of a certified safe zone sign she'd printed herself, hung with scotch tape above an electrical panel that still sparked when it rained. By noon, the janitorial crew, most of whom hadn't been trained in chemical cleanup, were mopping up an oil spill in the docking bay using old floor mats. The real cleanup request had been sitting in the maintenance queue for 2 weeks. When I mentioned it to Amber, she gave me a look like I'd just farted during a prayer. Oh my God, Linda, that's handled. We resolved it informally. No need to document things that aren't problems anymore. I blinked. Resolved how? There's no proper hazmat log. The mats are saturated. She waved her glittery nails like she was shooing away a fly. We're being agile. Come on, this isn't a courtroom. No, I thought, but it might be one day. I went back to my office. 9x9 cubicle that smelled like toner and betrayal, and opened up the inspection checklist. I redlined everything that hadn't been handled according to regulation, then saved a separate copy labeled MGMT Claims Unverified. That night, I forwarded the daily report to the COO with a short note, just keeping this on record per protocol. I didn't expect a response. I didn't get one, not even a read receipt. That was the third ignored message in 4 days. I'd spent most of my career being told my work was essential. Now, apparently, it was bad optics. They wanted clean numbers, not clean conditions. The next morning, Amber held a team breakfast in the conference room, bagels, fruit, and a PowerPoint titled Our Safety Vision. She started with a slide that said trust plus vibes equals results in Comic Sans. I nearly walked out on principle. We're redefining compliance, she declared, as if it were a yoga pose. Linda's job is evolving. She's more of a consultant now. My throat went dry. No meeting, no memo. Just that, she's more of a consultant now. Spoken over cranberry juice and Costco muffins. I sat through the rest of the slideshow in a daze, nodding politely while Amber explained how metrics are just gatekeepers and how visual harmony in the workplace prevents accidents. I watched her flip past a slide showing a photo of her dog in a hard hat. The intern clapped. Back at my desk, I inserted the external drive and began duplicating everything. Reports, photos, policy logs, even the voicemail from OSHA confirming an upcoming inspection. Still 2 weeks out, but close enough to smell. Every time I tried to raise a flag, they handed me a balloon. The investor tour was scheduled for Friday. Thursday morning, the whole warehouse reeked of lemon-scented bleach and panic. They'd rolled and rented safety equipment, polished the floors, and posted laminated signs with buzzwords like Synergy Zone and Eco-Efficiency Corridor. I watched them slap a safety first sticker on the eye wash station that hadn't dispensed water in months. I checked it myself, still bone dry. I wrote it down anyway. Later that day, I overheard Amber telling the marketing team, "Don't film anything near the old HVAC units, they're an eyesore." The HVAC units were also leaking refrigerant, but hey, at least they were ugly. That night, I sent another flagged report to the COO and copied myself on a personal email. Just in case, then I backed it all up again. 2 drives now, one in my purse, one in my freezer at home, tucked behind a lasagna. I wasn't trying to be a whistleblower. I just didn't want to end up reading about our facility in the news under the headline, Logistics Company Faces Lawsuit After Chemical Spill Hospitalizes 6. And maybe I was paranoid. Maybe they'd clean up just enough to pass. But the silence coming from upstairs wasn't ignorance. It was strategy. They were playing dumb and hoping I'd follow their lead. But I don't play dumb. I document. I found out I'd been removed from my own job by accident. Well, not accident unless you consider getting shanked in a dark alley, just a little miscommunication. Cheryl from HR, bless her gossipy little heart, pinged me around 3 p.m. Hey, are you not on the walkthrough roster anymore? Amber said Ryan's handling compliance shadowing now? Ryan, the intern. The one who thought PPE stood for professional power energy. The one who asked if forklifts ran on Bluetooth. That Ryan. I double-checked the schedule. My name was gone. Replaced with Ryan J. Safety Adjunct, TBD. No one had told me. No meeting. No notice. Not even a passive-aggressive post-it. Just erased, like 16 years of crawling through heat-scorched trailers and asbestos closets meant nothing compared to Amber's favorite coffee fetcher with a jawline and 3.1 GPA. I stood up, walked straight into the operations strategy sync happening in Conference B, aka Amber's glitter-glazed power circle, and paused at the door. Inside, Amber, Ryan, 2 floor leads, and the new marketing consultant who kept referring to warehouse workers as brand adjacents. Everyone had a lanyard. Everyone had a smoothie. No one looked up. I cleared my throat. Is there a reason I wasn't looped in? Amber looked over her shoulder with that botoxed Barbie smirk. Oh, Linda, you're here. This is just a strategy huddle. Figured you'd appreciate a breather while Ryan gets some field exposure. Exposure to what? Falling boxes and untrained forklift drivers? She laughed too loud, like she was trying to bounce the sound off every ego in the room. He's got a good eye. You'll still be handling policy and internal comms. The less hands-on stuff. Hands-on, like OSHA violations, toxic spills, unreported injuries, faulty racking, things that actually kill people when ignored. But sure, let's give the TikTok intern a hard hat and see what he can spot. I left the room without another word. I knew what this was. It wasn't restructuring. It was an eviction. Back at my desk, I felt my phone buzz. Voicemail, unknown number. I played it. Hi, this is Darren McMillan from the regional OSHA office. Just confirming our standard compliance audit for tomorrow at 9 a.m. Looking forward to touching base with your team. Give me a call if anything changes. My mouth went dry. Tomorrow. The inspection was tomorrow. I didn't panic. I'd done this dance before, dozens of audits. Usually, I prepped checklists, reviewed protocols, walked the floor personally. This time, I'd been benched, and no one in that room knew squat about CFR 1910 standards, let alone how to bluff their way through a federal inspection. I forwarded the voicemail to the COO with the subject line, "Urgent OSHA audit confirmed for tomorrow at 9 a.m." Then I took a walk, down to the loading dock, past the rickety stairwell that still hadn't been reinforced. I watched a temp haul boxes without gloves while a manager scrolled Instagram. 5 minutes later, the COO called. "Linda, I saw your message. You're aware they reassigned my inspection role to Ryan. Doesn't have clearance to even speak to an inspector. A pause, it's just for show. They're not looking to cite anything, just keep things tidy. We'll handle it. Handle it how? The documents are outdated. The eye wash stations are still dry. Half the safety protocols haven't been reviewed since Q1. He sighed. That heavy, annoyed dad sigh men like him mastered in middle management. We're not asking you to cover anything up. Just be discreet. Amber's doing great. Let her run point on this. Investors are here next week and we can't afford a panic over some missing logs." I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't even laugh. I just stared at my monitor at the folder marked archived, full compliance logs Q1, Q3, and dragged it to my encrypted drive. Then opened a new file, named it Exit Strategy. Because when your own company tells you to be discreet the day before a federal audit, after gutting your authority and swapping you out with a golden retriever in khakis, you start preparing for the fire before they even smell the smoke. They didn't want me there tomorrow. They didn't want a witness. The clock on my monitor read 4:58 p.m. I remember that number like it's tattooed on the inside of my skull. Not 5 o'clock, not end of business, not even enough time to finish an end-of-day email. 2 minutes before quitting time, Amber came stomping in like a toddler who just discovered her juice box was empty. She had a manila folder in one hand and some kind of sparkle gel pen in the other, probably signed my fate with it. "Congratulations," she sneered, loud enough for the two junior analysts nearby to pause their clickety-clacking. "You're terminated. Pack your desk now." She dropped the folder on my keyboard like it was a party invitation. I didn't blink, didn't flinch, just reached into my top drawer, pulled out my badge, and handed it over without a word. Her hand brushed mine, cold, clammy, like she already knew she was holding a live grenade and had no idea which end would blow. "You can skip the exit interview," she said, like she was doing me a favor. "It's revoking your access at 5 sharp, don't dawdle." I turned off my monitor. Took nothing but my mug and the backup drive I'd already packed in my purse 3 days earlier. "Compliance is my cardio," the mug said. "Cheap gag gift from 2 interns ago." I walked past the kitchen. Past the conference room with the safety as sexy poster she'd hung for the walkthrough. Past Ryan, who gave me a nervous thumbs up like I was just heading to early retirement. I didn't look back. But when I passed the janitor's closet, I saw Hector standing there, mop in one hand, eyebrow raised like it was trying to escape his face. He mouthed, "What the hell?" real slow. "See me crawling under leaking pipes." He'd handed me gloves when the lab sink backed up into the break room. He once caught Amber spray painting rust on a stair rail for aesthetics. He knew. Outside, the sky was that weird corporate blue-gray, like the color of a finance bro's button-up shirt. The parking lot was mostly empty, except for the finance director vaping in her Prius and someone blasting Nickelback from the loading dock. I made it to my car, opened the door, and then just didn't get in. I stood there. Purse on my shoulder, mug in my hand, heart beating steady but slower than usual, not sad, not shocked, just suspended like gravity was on a smoke break. Then I pulled out my phone. First text went to myself, termination 4:58 p.m., folder received, witness present. Second text, OSHA contact Darren McMillan. Voicemail saved. Third, initiate final report. Timestamp tonight. File under revoked authority. I didn't even realize I was smiling until the wind blew my hair into my mouth. They thought I'd slink away, cry in the bathroom, scream about injustice or beg for an appeal. But I'd already submitted my resignation to reality 2 weeks ago when they handed my responsibilities to a barely sentient polo shirt and told me to trust the process. What Amber didn't know, what none of them knew, is that firing me wasn't just a personnel change. It was a regulatory event. And now I had receipts with timestamps and a duty by law to report, so I stood in the parking lot under a dying security light and started typing. The night shift crew clocked in behind me. One of them gave me a little nod. I didn't nod back. I was busy documenting. I didn't go out for a drink, didn't call a friend, didn't even change clothes. I drove straight home with my badge still warm from Amber's clammy hand and my half-drunk thermos rattling in the passenger seat like a ghost with caffeine jitters. My neighborhood was already dark when I pulled in. Suburban silence, porch lights on timers, dogs barking at nothing. The kind of quiet that lets you feel how loud your thoughts really are. I walked in, dropped my purse by the door, and sat down at the kitchen table, no lights, just the dull blue glow of my laptop screen booting up. I didn't need dinner. I needed completion. The file was already half-written, my final report, pre-drafted in a folder called Contingency, Immediate Termination. I'd started it the same day I caught Amber using a paint marker to correct a pressure gauge. Something told me back then I'd never be allowed to finish my work the honest way. So I typed, Object, termination notice OSHA licensed officer noncompliance risk urgent date. Today's date, time, 4:58 p.m., timestamped, filed by Linda A. Redmond, OSHA cert hash 19 to 4487 exp. 2027. I included the voicemail from Darren at OSHA confirming the upcoming audit. I attached my termination timestamp. I included the policy clause outlining my legal responsibility to report loss of oversight, especially when it occurred within 24 hours of a scheduled inspection. I noted the last time I'd submitted a compliance review, noted my revoked authority, noted that my access to internal safety protocols had already been cut off by the company's IT. I didn't editorialize, I didn't embellish, just facts. Cold, clinical, unavoidable. Then I opened the encrypted folder. Backups of every violation report from the last 4 quarters. Photos of exposed wiring, leaking chemicals, locked emergency exits, tampered logs. I added them to a secondary drive upload and forwarded them to the state compliance office. Not out of spite, out of obligation. Because that's what my license requires. And because deep down, I knew the company's legal team would try to bury it all before the inspector even parked his car. The email to OSHA went out at 7:11 p.m. One to state compliance, 7:13. A final copy to myself with headers marked Do Not Alter Legal Duty Fulfilled. I sat back in the chair. Finally exhaled. No rage, no adrenaline, just silence, the good kind. A neighbor's sprinkler kicked on outside. Somewhere down the block, a garage door groaned closed. I stared at my reflection in the laptop screen, tired eyes, makeup half melted, expression flat. But my spine, straight, they didn't break me. I didn't come here to fight them. Didn't come to burn the place down or scream at HR or beg for a second chance. I came to do the job, the real job, and now it was done. I powered off the laptop and sat there for a moment longer, just still, just breathing, because sometimes revenge isn't about screaming. Sometimes it's just a PDF with your signature on it, sent before they even realize you're gone. At exactly 9 o'clock a.m., government-issued white sedan pulled into the visitor lot, unironic, unbranded, and unmistakably federal. A man in a navy windbreaker stepped out, clipboard in hand, expression like stone left in the sun too long. His name was Darren McMillan, Regional OSHA Inspector, and he was right on time. Reception barely had time to offer him a sticker badge before he was already halfway down the main hallway. The front desk called Amber. She didn't answer, probably still fluffing her bangs or picking which blazer screamed competent adult louder. Meanwhile, Darren had already made his way to the warehouse floor, where a handful of confused shift leads stood blinking at him like deer in high vis. Who's handling safety today? He asked, looking around. Ryan, sweet, stupid Ryan, approached with a grin that could have doubled as a cry for help. Hey, welcome to us. I'm helping out with that stuff now, that stuff, Darren repeated flatly. Yeah, safety, compliance, workplace vibes, all that. Ryan gestured toward a laminated poster taped to a forklift. Work safe, work happy. Darren blinked. Where's your licensed safety officer? Oh, well, Linda used to, she's not. She left. Yesterday, I think. Darren's eyebrows lifted a millimeter. So you're currently operating without a certified officer? Amber came trotting up just in time to intercept. Hi there, sorry, traffic. Yes, we've got everything handled. Everything's been updated. We've had like a total culture shift around safety this quarter. Super proactive. Is there documentation of the shift? He asked, adjusting the clipboard. Documentation? Her eyes flicked toward Ryan like he might magically manifest a binder out of his AirPods. We've had a few informal updates, she added, voice getting higher. It's all been addressed, just maybe not in that formal way. But totally addressed. Darren looked around. Where's your eye wash station? Amber turned to Ryan. Ryan turned to the wall. The station had been removed during aesthetic optimization last week. All that remained was a faint rectangle and a new motivational poster. You are the real safety tool. Darren wrote something down. In the office upstairs, word was spreading. First through whispers, who's the guy in the jacket? Then through Slack messages like, is this the real audit? And I thought we were getting a delay? No one had answers. The COO hadn't shown up yet. The VP was conveniently working remote, and Amber was now pacing beside Darren, reciting company slogans like they doubled as legal defense. We believe safety is a lifestyle, not just a checklist. That's cute, Darren said, scribbling again, but per OSHA, checklists are required. Where's your emergency log? Ryan, do you? No clue, Ryan muttered. Darren stopped walking. Oh, just to confirm, there is no licensed safety officer on site? Amber froze. Well, technically. No, but the environment is very safe. Our people are thriving. He glanced at the freshly bleached floor, still slick from an overzealous janitor. A delivery guy nearly wiped out on it moments earlier. Amber hadn't noticed. You said someone named Linda handled compliance before? Amber hesitated. Yes, but she's no longer with the company. When did she leave? Amber blinked. Yesterday afternoon, around 5 maybe. Do you have the termination time documented? She paused too long. Darren looked up slowly. You did document her termination, right? Because if she was your only licensed officer and you didn't notify OSHA immediately, Ryan coughed. I think she said something about 4:58. Darren stopped writing, looked at Amber. I'll need to speak with the COO and legal. Now. Color drained from Amber's face like someone had flipped her into grayscale. The safety walkthrough devolved from marketing opportunity to bloodless crime scene in seconds. Darren didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just kept asking the kind of questions that forced people to choose between lying and choking on their own incompetence. By 9:22 a.m., he was being led, wordlessly, upstairs to the executive wing. And still, no one mentioned Linda, because they knew. They knew she hadn't walked out in defeat. She'd clocked out like a loaded gun being holstered. And now the recoil had arrived. The boardroom was colder than usual, or maybe it just felt that way because everyone inside had gone quiet the second Darren McMillan took his seat. The COO sat stiffly at the head of the table, his tie slightly askew like he'd yanked it tighter 5 minutes too late. The VP, Amber's father, was hunched over a yellow legal pad, scribbling something that didn't matter. And Amber? Well, Amber was sitting between them, looking like she'd just been told Santa Claus had filed a restraining order. Darren laid his clipboard down gently, like he was placing a tombstone. He didn't flinch, didn't sigh, didn't smile. He just reached into his brief and slid out 2 pieces of paper. The first was a printed copy of Linda's OSHA license. Name, Linda Ann Redmond certification hash. 19 to 4487 status, active exp. 2027 designation, licensed compliance officer primary. The second was an email. Subject line, official notification, revoked authority termination timestamp. Sent at 7:11 p.m. the night prior. The body of the message was short, professional, cold. This message confirms the termination of Linda Ann Redmond as of 4:58 p.m. on yesterday's date. As she was the sole licensed safety officer on record, I am fulfilling my regulatory duty to report the gap in oversight. Darren tapped the timestamp. You officially terminated your only licensed OSHA-certified officer at 4:58 p.m. yesterday, he said. As of that exact minute, this facility entered noncompliance status. The COO leaned forward, pressing his fingers to his forehead like he was trying to push the migraine back into his skull. His glasses came off slowly. He didn't clean them, just set them on the table and stared at them like they'd betrayed him, too. The VP stopped writing. His hand hovered over the pad like he forgot what a pen even did. Now, Darren continued, voice even, I understand there was an inspection scheduled. That's fine. Standard procedure. But here's what isn't fine. No transition plan, no emergency appointment, and no OSHA notification within the required timeframe. That's 3 federal violations before I even walked in the door. Amber opened her mouth. It moved, but no sound came out. Her face twitched like a bad Zoom call buffering. Darren didn't acknowledge her. I was told, the COO began, that Linda would be present. Darren finished for him. Yes, that was the assumption. Your internal organizational chart still listed her as your compliance officer this morning, but your own termination record says otherwise. So either your internal system is out of date, or you tried to mislead a federal audit. A silence fell so thick you could hear the ventilation system hum. Darren sat back in his chair, not smug, not angry, just methodical. Here's the issue, he said. OSHA doesn't just certify people for fun. Linda Redmond had a duty, not optional, to report the loss of her authority. She fulfilled that, which means as of 4:58 p.m. yesterday, your facility was operating with 0 licensed oversight. That carries a penalty. The only variable now is how severe it'll be. Amber tried again. I didn't realize you signed the termination, correct? She froze, glanced at her father. She did, the VP muttered. Darren nodded. Then I'll need that signed document. Originals, timestamps, all of it. Our legal team will also need your last 3 internal safety reviews, and the personnel file for Mr. Ryan J., who apparently assumed responsibility without certification. The COO stood up suddenly, pacing, one hand rubbing the back of his neck like he could massage his way out of liability. We didn't intend to. I'm not here for intentions, Darren interrupted. I'm here for records. Amber had gone pale, her knuckles white against the edge of the table. But Linda didn't say anything before she left. She didn't need to, Darren replied. She did her job. She filed her report. She followed the law. Now I'm here following mine. He closed his folder, stood up calmly, and added, You'll be contacted within the next 48 hours regarding preliminary findings and potential federal review. Until then, I suggest you consult legal counsel and, frankly, call Linda. I'll need her notes to even begin cleaning this up. He didn't wait for a response. He just walked out, heels clicking against tile like a countdown. Amber didn't follow. The COO slumped back into his chair, face buried in his hands, and the VP, he stared at his daughter like he didn't recognize her. Like the golden ticket he'd hand-delivered into the building had just exploded in the boardroom. 4:58 p.m. One decision, one signature. Now the house was burning. And Linda wasn't even in the building, but her shadow was. It sat quietly in the chair she used to occupy, quiet, meticulous, and sharper than anyone had realized. Until now. The legal team arrived just after 10, 3 suits deep, and one of them already sweating through his collar. They were ushered into the boardroom where Darren waited, calm as ever, now joined by a junior compliance rep from the Department of Labor, who looked 12 but carried a folder thick enough to choke a shredder. Everyone sat except Amber. She stood near the far end of the table like a school kid caught with a vape in her lunchbox, arms crossed, trying to pretend she belonged. Darren opened with no preamble. Per Federal Labor Statute 1910.1200 and CFR 1904, he said, flipping through the documents with surgical ease. Any workplace operating without a licensed compliance officer, especially one previously under certified oversight, is considered at risk. He paused. That includes risk of unreported injury, misclassified hazards, and liability in the event of accidents, minor or otherwise. The younger rep added, to be clear, even a paper cut logged improperly during that gap can constitute a reportable violation. Multiply that by each work hour until compliance is restored. You begin to see how fast this escalates. A rustle of shifting suits. Legal started scribbling. Darren set down another paper. We've logged that Linda Redmond's termination occurred at 4:58 p.m. yesterday. She filed a formal notice of revoked authority within 3 hours. That fulfills her obligation under federal code. The VP coughed into his hand. The COO wouldn't even meet Darren's eyes. Then came the question. Sharp, clinical, and like a bullet. Who, asked one of the attorneys, authorized her termination? Silence. You could have heard a thumb drive drop. Amber's eyes darted sideways. Her father finally looked at her, not with anger, just tired disbelief. Like he'd finally seen the math he never wanted to check. I did, Amber said softly. Darren nodded. Thank you. That's consistent with the documentation. And I assume you reviewed the scope of Linda's license before signing? I didn't think it was that important. The junior compliance rep tapped her pen. That's not great. Legal cleared their throat and leaned forward, addressing the board directly now. Given the regulatory timeline and the proximity of the inspection, this is likely to trigger a full federal review. Best case, we're talking audit and fines. Worst case, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. The COO rubbed his temples like he was trying to rub out the whole week. The VP leaned back, staring at the ceiling the way people do when they realize the elevator cable's already snapped. Then the board chair, silent until now, adjusted his watch and looked directly at Amber. You can leave the room. Her jaw dropped slightly. What will take it from here? Amber hesitated, blinking rapidly, then turned and walked out, her heels clicking against the tile like a metronome for downfall. She closed the door behind her. No one spoke. No one had to, because in that room, her name was no longer an asset. It was a liability. And Linda? Linda wasn't there. She didn't need to be. Her badge wasn't on the table. Her voice wasn't in the room. But her silence, her absence, was louder than any speech she could have given. She hadn't taken revenge. She'd done her job, and that was the thing they'd never understood. When someone like Linda leaves, they don't burn the building down. They just stop holding it up. The office was quiet, peaceful. No posters screaming about synergy. No scent of industrial bleach trying to cover rot. Just clean carpet, a humming HVAC system, and the smell of real coffee, dark roast, not the watered-down excuse they served back at her old place. Linda sat across from a broad mahogany desk, legs crossed, a slim portfolio resting on her lap. No badge on her blazer. No nameplate. Just her, steady, alert, and entirely unbothered. The man across from her wore a stay-tissued windbreaker, but his voice was warm. Less interrogator, more colleague. He'd already skimmed through her resume, already read the file. They told me, he said, flipping the last page with a smile, you filed the report the same night you were let go. Right down to the minute, that's smart. Linda sipped her coffee, still hot, no rush. It was my last duty, she said evenly. He nodded, the boards reeling. They didn't even realize they'd triggered a federal cascade until your timestamp popped up in the system. I figured as much. He leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his knee. We're expanding oversight for 3 logistics hubs upstate, all mid-sized, unionized, nothing flashy, but we need someone who knows where the real cracks form before they become headlines. He didn't ask if she was interested. He didn't need to. She set her mug down gently and opened the portfolio, revealing neatly tabbed compliance models, inspection rubrics, and policy drafts already updated, already aligned with the newest federal guidelines. The kind of documentation that takes quiet nights and unthanked weekends. The kind no one noticed until everything went sideways. Outside the office, the world kept moving. Trucks honked. A forklift beeped in the nearby loading dock. Somewhere, someone was probably spilling coolant and pretending it wasn't their problem. But not here, not now. Here, Linda was exactly where she belonged, at the table, composed and no longer being ignored by people who thought her silence meant surrender. She adjusted the sleeve of her blazer and looked up. I'll need access to the existing incident logs, she said. We'll give you everything. The man smiled again, stood, and extended his hand. Back downtown, across the city, Boardroom sat in stunned quiet. Legal scrambling, CFO reviewing penalties. Amber's badge deactivated, COO's voicemail full. The VP staring at the line that ended his quarter's bonus. And not one of them, not a single suit in that room could undo the timestamp. 4:58 p.m., termination, by their own hand. And at 7:11 p.m., Linda filed her final report, not to retaliate, not to ruin them, but because the rulebook said she must. No gloating, no press release, no internet tantrum, just quiet, precise consequence. Because in the end, Linda didn't need revenge, she had protocol, and she used it better than they ever deserved. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit him.